A couple of weeks ago, my son came up to me after a potluck we had with our close family and asked me if I could make him a shield and sword so he could have epic battles with his cousins. My first thought was, of course, what a great idea. My second thought was, what should the design look like? My son absolutely loves the Legend of Zelda games, and I'm quite a fan myself, having grown up playing it on my Game Boy. We decided on creating a replica of Link's shield and Master Sword. I got really excited about this project. I got started that very day. The construction would be out of 1/8 inch sheets of hardwood board and birch plywood. I began by cutting all the boards to rough dimensions at first. I added shallow cuts into the birch plywood to give it a more realistic look, as if the shield consists of separate planks of wood. Then gave it a coat of water-based stain. I scaled up a stock photo of Link's shield to the size I needed and used it to make templates for the front and back sections of the shield. I cut off the sections I won't be needing at first with a jigsaw, then use a router to get a nice clean cut using the template as my guide. To adhere the template to the workpiece, I used masking tape and CA glue. It does a great job holding it all in place while using the router. I used a 220 grit sandpaper to clean up any hard and rough edges before beginning the gluing process. I wanted the shield to have a slight curve. To achieve this, I used multiple layers of hardboard and a custom clamping mold I made to do the trick. When applying glue to the front and back sections, I would stay about a 1/4 inch from the inside edge to prevent any glue from coming through on that side. It took 2 gluing sessions to finish the shield. I wanted to make certain I was centering the sections as best as possible. After one side was finished, I used a jigsaw and router to clean up the edges before gluing the front section on. And 12 hours later, I took the complete shield out from the mold and it has this nice curve to it. So I gave it a final sanding and prepped it for paint. Masking off the sections of the shield prior to paint was a very important step to prevent overspray on any finished surfaces. I sprayed on 2 coats of primer before adding my very first color. After the primer dried, I masked off the sides of the shields and I used a satin gray for the back side of the shield. I applied the paint in many thin coats. Did not want to risk any paint drips. After the paint had enough time to completely dry, I removed all the masking tape to reveal the finished look. After I just removed the masking tape, it is time to mask it back up. I mask off the complete back side and begin work on the front. This side would be much more complex as it has many different colors. I started off with painting the inside a metallic blue made by Behr. And for the Hylian crest, I used a stencil blank and traced it out using a knife. This was my very first time using custom stencils, and the people at Hobby Lobby were very helpful. They got me everything I needed, which included something called stencil adhesive, which not only keeps the stencil from moving during painting, but also gives the end result sharp, beautiful lines. I finished masking off the entire surface so I can spray the crest in a bright red color. If you want to know all the colors I use in this video, I'll add them to the description below. I was very pleased with how this crest turned out. Now, time for more masking, and this time to paint the border of the front of the shield. I scuffed up the painted surface with some sandpaper before painting. I used an aluminum color to give it a shiny metallic look. I initially wanted to use pieces of the same hardboard material for the Triforce, but ultimately decided to paint them onto the shield using stencils like I did for the crest. The great thing about these stencils is the fact that I can reuse them to create more copies of the shield since all my kids wanted one, including my youngest, which is only 3 years old. Now, after getting it all painted, we move on to making the handle. I used an oak dowel for the handle, which I then wrapped with some leather strips that I purchased off Amazon. I initially sprayed the dowel with an adhesive and used CA glue on the ends to keep them from coming apart. I added threaded inserts on either side of the dowel for attaching to the metal brackets. I worried that using a regular screw into the end grain just wouldn't hold that well. And when it came to attaching the handle to the shield, I had a hard time locating hardware locally that would work. I was lucky enough to stumble upon an online marketplace for all sorts of hardware, where I found these L brackets, which would work great for this application. I'll have links to all the products I used for this project in the description below if you're interested. I also added a strap opposite the handle. I used a slightly wider piece of leather here. I also use a small piece of elastic to keep it snug against the user's arm. And there you have it, the finished product. Let me know what you guys thought about this project. Like the video and subscribe to see more like it. See you next time.